Greetings, friends. It's me, Wayman29, and I'm replying to Tommy in the Bronx. And the video is called Jesus, an Overnight Success Story. And such conversion stories have always fascinated me. And I found them to run across many religions and belief systems. You talk to people from Islam, and you talk to people from other religions, very much have the same story. And what's interesting is it seems to affect their lives in a profound way. And what's interesting is I remember my grandfather, who was Free Methodist, he used to talk about it. My aunts used to talk about it, and my father. And when he was alive, he was of such. This happened to him. And what was interesting is, back in the day, Tommy, you mentioned that they're dwelling in the past and whatnot. However, back in the day, once that you were quote-unquote saved, or you were born again, so to speak, according to evangelical ideas, you had to go make restitution. So it wasn't a free ride. It was very grueling. He almost got arrested for confessing to tax fraud, things like that. And he went to his neighbors and apologized if he did anything. And it was pretty amazing. I have yet to see such things happen as part of the conversion process in modern day evangelicalism. I have yet to see people try to, after being born again, right the wrongs of the past. And it's a tough job, restitution. And he was a firm believer in that. Well, the story was my grandfather used he used to have a farm, and he had friends who weren't all that good to him, and they used to get him in all kinds of trouble. They used to spend money that he needed for groceries and taking care of his family on drinking and partying, and they would actually come over, help him do his barn chores, and then they'd go out many times and not come home until very, very early in the morning. And finally my grandmother left my grandfather for a period of time, and then she came back, and my grandfather had a friend, and he came down. He was starting a church, and he came down and he talked to my grandfather. And my grandfather started going to this particular church. And then it was, boom, cold turkey. Quit smoking, quit drinking. Him and my grandmother went to town. I believe my Aunt Noreen told me this, and sold their wedding ring. Because at that time they didn't believe that particular Free Methodist church, old Free Methodist, didn't believe in wearing jewelry. So they sold it, and he was Christian, born again, ever since. Never looked back. Never had a drink of beer. I remember one time he never wore a tie. I remember one time what was interesting about that. The story was there was some argument about tie wearing in church, and it was kind of humorous to hear my grandfather say it. That he wore this tie. Somebody commented on it, and they said to him, "Well, that looks like it came out of Hollywood." And so from then on, he never wore a tie. But later on, my grandmother was chuckling and said that he only had one tie, and he ended up losing it for some reason, and he never found it, so he never wore a tie. But what was interesting about that was he said that he didn't care to wear a tie. Personally, when we talked about it, I used to talk to him about it, and he said that it wasn't important, and that somebody said something to him about it, and so God told him not to wear a tie, and he didn't, because he thought that it was a distraction. If that little argument were to distract him from being a believer, then he didn't need to wear that. And a lot of people don't do that today, Tommy. A lot of people don't do that today. They don't cut out the eye that offends them. They don't cut off the arm that offends them. And the literature tells us we have to do that. So So I've seen it enacted. I've seen it enacted, and I've seen it in the lives of people around me. That's from the evangelical's perspective, because I was brought up in the evangelical church. However, other religions and other belief systems have different stories, and if you look at it from an anthropological point of view, that process can be very, very interesting. It can be very, very grueling leading up to conversion, and then you have this catharsis, and then you have this about change, and it's different for some people than others. It's kind of like darker the night, brighter the light kind of thing, where if you committed all these offenses and then had this about change, it would be more dramatic than a person who was, say, living by the rules and just going through the motions. They're probably their conversion wouldn't be as dramatic, because you wouldn't have to make very big changes. And in the literature, Jesus talks about this. He didn't come to save the people who were of the religion doing good. He came to save these people who actually needed it, and who were doing all these destructive things to themselves. So Judaism has the good and evil impulse. The Buddha and the story of Siddhartha had this about change. Ideas out of Mormonism, Joseph Smith and his about change. So something even in Native American cultures, something definitely happens, and it's a very interesting process. And I would say that some are more legitimate than others, and based on what I've read about and what I've seen. Because sometimes you can have this experience, and it still won't work for you. And there's volumes and volumes of church doctrines across the belief systems written on that. People argue about, well, if you're saved, are you always saved? And once this dramatic change happens, is it good to save up treasures or certain things in the afterlife which would gain you eternal life? So, I don't know, something to think about, friends. Take care, and remember, if everybody's thinking alike, then somebody isn't thinking.